because you're already tired, you're already stressed, everything's already magnified by all of those things, that sometimes even the smallest thing can trigger you.
Blue skies, rose tinted glasses, running around singing la 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 all the time. Definitely not. Hello friends, this is Nhi and Dee. We're the hosts for the Milk and Madness podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. In our last episode, we discussed our parenting styles as determined by an online quiz. If you haven't had a chance to listen yet, spoiler alert, we're going to continue the discussion in today's episode. I would recommend listening to that episode first as we go into a little bit more detail about the main parenting styles.
So as a brief overview, the four main styles are authoritarian, which is a focus on obedience and punishment as discipline. The authoritative, which is creating positive relationships but also still enforcing rules. There's permissive, where there's no rules that are enforced and kids will just be kids style of approach. And the uninvolved parent, which is providing very little guidance, very little nurturing or attention. So after taking the quiz ourselves and having the discussion in the last episode, Nhi and I, we both agree it was a really reflective piece. So we asked our partners to complete the quiz, and today we'll delve into their parenting style and how that either complements or conflicts with our own. So Let's start with Matthew, Nhi's husband. Can you tell us what parenting style the quiz gave him and maybe a little bit about that parenting style?
Yes, he got nature, and we'll make sure that all the sources are listed in our show notes for you to reference. So some believe it is a combination of attachment parenting and sustainable living. Others may include holistic health practices, unschooling and off-grid. Natural parenting is gentle and intensive, encouraging parents to stay in tune with their child's needs. You know what is best for your child and you have a community to guide you along the way. Natural parenting focuses on a parent's instinct and intuition. It breaks molds of what parenting should look like and invites us to redefine what parenting means to best meet our family's unique needs. Natural parenting allows children to develop at their own pace. The practice ensures children are meeting developmental milestones while being mindful that meeting these milestones is about the child's best interest and not done with a competitive mindset. That was an interesting description, I feel. I think, okay, actually having just read that, I would say some of it makes sense because as it describes that it is a style that complements attachment. And we all know from the previous episode that I am attachment, and through the conversation last week, it became clearer and clearer to me that yes, this is accurate. So I think some of that definitely makes sense in terms of it complementing attachment, because I do feel that Matthew and I, our parenting styles have really, I would say they're different, but they're closely related enough that honestly we don't have a lot of issues or a lot of conflict in terms of, oh no, you want to approach it this way, I want to approach it that way. So I think overall, it sounds really flexible. It sounds really open to, I think it's, to be honest, I feel like it's a bit more flexible than he is. I'm not saying he's not flexible, but maybe a little bit more than what I've experienced being his partner. But overall, I would say, yeah, you know what? I think I do agree, which is quite interesting. Let's move on to Calvin before we deep dive further. So Calvin, your hubby got attachment like me.
He did. Initially, I was a little bit surprised. And then once you think about it and you really, really think about it and you're like, oh yeah, remember this and remember that. Yep, totally attachments. For those who haven't had a chance to listen to last week's episode, attachment parent, as defined by parents.com, is a nurturing and hands-on approach. These parents think that putting a child's needs first leads to independence and emotional stability. Parents who follow this style value physical closeness, such as bed sharing, co-sleeping, extended breastfeeding, positive discipline, and other attachment-based approaches to raising children. A study of the American Academy of Pediatrics found an association between sensitive, responsive parenting and children's language skills. Specifically, kids of parents with higher levels of responsiveness and warmth had more than 2 times better language skills than children whose parents were less responsive. On the other hand, this parenting style is demanding and can sometimes feel out of balance when parents are less flexible in their approach. That describes Calvin to a T in some ways, and then in other ways, no. So what we were saying last week, that these descriptions, of course, are more like the extreme version,
Yeah.
and that we feel that we're always going to be a mixture. And same with Matthew, like he is a mixture, maybe nature, but not as flexible. Like maybe he has some routines, maybe there's some other parenting style that is mixed in the mix. And same with Calvin, like definitely I think he gravitates towards attachment, but yeah, he's a bit of combination of a couple of different styles as well. In regards to your approach, because you mentioned, so obviously talking about nature and talking about attachment, and they do complement each other. It's like they're both a style. I think it said that it's within the same sort of style.
Mm-hmm.
So you found that your parenting styles with Matthew, they do complement each other. You don't have a lot of differences in the way you approach things.
Yep. I think generally, yeah, there hasn't been many issues at all. And it's something I've been thinking about actually since our last episode, because you might not know how you're going to be as a parent before you become a parent often. But then on the other hand, it's an extension of you. It's an extension of your personality, an extension of what drives you, what annoys you, what makes you tick. I really do think that. And I think that if you have a great relationship with your partner and you get along, then hopefully becoming parents is an extension of that. I think as people, if there were things that Matt and I were really like headbutting on, then I think that might translate into our parenting styles, right? If he was really all about nature and all that stuff, and I was, let's just say, authoritarian or something like that, I feel like that would be a really big conflict in terms of just day to day approaches to parenting. But I think in our situation, we've been really lucky, and I'm not surprised. Like we get along, which is good because he's my partner and all. But overall, I think our styles have really complemented each other. And there's been a few things where we're like, okay, I think maybe this, and you think this, and okay, we can do some sort of merged version of it where we have defined it in a way that works for us and for our kids. So I think I've been really lucky in regards to that. How about you?
For us, it's slightly different. I'm not sure if I completely agree it's due to the parenting styles. I think Calvin and I are very chalk and cheese, and we've known this from day dot. Like we are very polar opposites in our personality, and it seemed to have worked. Like it just works. Somewhere along the line, some way we complement each other in our personalities. When it comes to parenting, though, I feel that it has gotten harder, because even though as a couple we were okay and we were fine with who we were and who we were in our relationship, after having kids that kind of changed. And I think we both really reflected on how different we are, and that translated into how different our parenting styles are. Not to say that those two parenting styles don't complement each other, but our personalities, I think, or the way that we want to do certain things, I feel like we do argue a lot about the kids and about the way that we should be doing things, and just in general about stuff. So yeah, maybe it's more a personality thing, less a parenting approach. But I don't know, the more we do these podcasts, the more I get to reflect, the more I really get to think about these topics. And sometimes you really do have those moments where, oh, like now that I'm thinking about this more and more, it's making more sense, or it's explaining why certain things are a certain way.
Yeah, I really appreciate that honesty. And that's what we're about with this podcast. We're real, and we're going to say it how it is. And I'm not saying that Matthew and I are like blue skies, rose tinted glasses, running around singing la 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 all the time. Definitely not. But I think in terms of when you become parents, the spotlight on your relationship, the impact of parenting on your relationship is so intense. And honestly, there's just so much that you could try to anticipate for or prepare for, but there's so much that you just can't, because you've not been through that situation before. And we have discussed before, and I think we touched on this a little bit last week, where you don't really know what kind of parent you're going to be before you become a parent. You might have some inkling. Yes, I do think it's an extension of your personality in some way, but then it's a new branch of your personality that you haven't, explored before. I think any differences in your personality styles and any little thing that might become an issue will be magnified when you become a parent. And that's the reality, because you're just thrown into the deep end straight away, and you're told to swim. You got to swim right now. And then to learn to swim is hard. That's a really hard process. So I think what you're saying makes perfect sense in terms of that. And it's just navigating the differences. If we could turn back time before you guys became a parent, is there anything, I don't know, maybe advice to someone who's listening right now who's thinking about becoming a parent? Is there anything that you could have done or they could do to help prepare for any key differences that they're going to experience when they become a parent?
I think the best advice that I can give someone is to really work on themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
Because regardless of what comes, regardless of what happens, if there is a conflict, it's all about how you handle it. So if it does come to a stage where you do fight, like things do come up, even though you are quite similar, things will come up where you disagree or you don't quite like how they handle that particular situation. If you get triggered by things, or if there's just something that conflicts, and if you're with someone, you would assume that you already communicate and you already do all those things and that your values align and all that sort of stuff. So there shouldn't be anything drastic that comes up that you're going to conflict about that it will end up in separating because you didn't talk about these things before. But definitely have those conversations beforehand if you need to, about raising your kids and all of that. But for me, it would just be working on yourself, because the way that I can communicate with Calvin, the way that we can resolve through those conflicts is probably the biggest takeaway for me in terms of resolving my own childhood trauma and my triggers and all of that, because he doesn't know those things. So if he might do something or he might say something, and if I react poorly in those situations, it just causes conflict. But if I sit him down, I say, Calvin, like, this is what happened to me. This was my experience, and I'd like to avoid it happening to Amelia, or I'd like to avoid putting these ideas into Aiden's head. We can have that mature parent-to-parent conversation together, and I won't be as triggered and I won't feed off my emotions. So I think parenting, because you're already tired, you're already stressed, everything's already magnified by all of those things, that sometimes even the smallest thing can trigger you. But if you can resolve those triggers, if you can try and heal those things before becoming a parent, I think it makes such a difference through that parenting journey. And it's definitely helped for me. And I didn't do it before I had kids. I only started doing that after having kids. So you can do it anytime.
Yeah, your journey of self-discovery has been really when you became a mum. And I think from our previous conversations, that was the catalyst for you to start that journey. So I think that's great advice. If you could start that journey before you become a parent, then that will give you more mental space to focus on becoming a parent. Whereas you've had to juggle that, who am I as a woman, a human being, as who is Dee, who is Diana, and then also who is Diana as a mum, as a partner,
Correct.
as a wife, right?
Yes.
I think I went through that personal discovery kind of journey way before becoming a mum, and that's probably really helped me. And so some background stories, like I'm thinking how far back do I go? But I was, in terms of like relationships and my identity, how those two connect. Like I was with my high school boyfriend for 7 years, almost 8 years. And he was absolutely just the best first boyfriend you could ever have, like just incredible. So my foundation in terms of relationships and stuff was really solid. And then after him, I was single for a long time, and I absolutely made the most of that. And I lived in London and I traveled, and you know what? I genuinely found myself in that time. I redefined who I was. I loved myself, and I still do. And I really do think you need to love yourself truly before you can love anyone else, and know who you are and all that stuff. And I did all that way before I met Matthew. So when I met Matthew, in my head, I was like, okay, this is what I want. This is who I want. This is the stuff that I need. And these are the things that I'm not going to budge on, all that stuff. And I think maybe from the start, Matthew and I already on the same page, and certain things, like he always wanted to be a dad. And we did not as much as I think people should do. If you're listening, I think you should do it, but have those conversations in terms of what's important to you as a kid. What did you not get when you were growing up? What were your parents like? What positive things do you remember when you're growing up? What things still might cause nightmare now? So I think if you can possibly start that journey earlier, and then when you meet your person, have those conversations as early as you can before you become a parent. I have some friends actually. I just remembered something which I think could be interesting to some listeners. But I have friends who I actually set up, and now they have a daughter and they live together. But before they had their daughter, they bought a deck of cards, and actually I'll find it and I'll put it in the sources. But it was all about becoming a parent and all these questions. And I remember they mentioned I was already a parent at this stage. It was probably too late for us, but they went through that those cards and they told me it was amazing. It was so great. So I will find it and I will put in the sources. And anyone, if you're listening and you're thinking of becoming a parent or you're getting a bit serious with your partner, like I think go through it because it will highlight to you some stuff that maybe you need to talk about, some things that you need to work out before you're thrown in the deep end and there's lava on the floor or whatever it is. But yeah.
Where were you 7 years ago? I could have used those cards.
Sorry. I didn't use them either. But actually I might I'll look them up because it might be good now even.
Yeah,
So
I agree. They can't hurt to use them now, even just as a check-in. Are we still on the same page? Are we still aligned? But I 100% agree that those cards, or even just having the conversation, you didn't need the cards, you just had the conversations. Those conversations are really important because you don't know, you can't assume. I've had close friends that I've known for years and years, and they'll randomly say something that, for whatever reason, in my head, I just would not have thought that they would ever think that or say that.
mm-hmm.
And then I realized, I'm like, wait, we've never spoken about this before. When you become friends with certain people, sometimes I think you think that they just think like you.
Mm-hmm.
I do anyway. I'm just like, oh yeah, they think like me. And then when they say something that's just completely opposite to how I think, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not what I assumed, which is on me, not on them, of course. But same with partners. Sometimes you don't know how how they feel about like ear piercing, because that's still a thing. Luckily, Calvin and I agree on it, but you
Well,
might.
I disagree with you about it.
Okay, there you go. But
Right? If I had a daughter, and even if Kenzo said to me, I want my ears pierced, I'm like, sure, let's do it. But I think for you, it's you want them to be old enough to want
to
to
make
do
that
it, right?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
it's not that I'm saying no. It's just
sure.
in my culture, it's something that we do when they're about 3 months old, and I disagree with that. Yeah,
Yes, us is the same. Like I asked my mum
yeah.
recently because my sister is thinking of getting her daughter's ears pierced, and she was one end of last year, and I was like, I would have done it already. So there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fair. But if Matt had turned around and said, no way, like I don't want to, then it's yeah.
Let's chat about it. Yeah.
Let's chat about it. And I guess those cards are also good because if there is something that you conflict on, to your point earlier, is there room to compromise, or is it a hard no? I'm not doing that and I'm not budging. That's what it is. For example, our first Aiden is a boy, and Calvin wanted to have him circumcised. And had we have had that conversation before, it might have made things a lot easier. Not that we had really big conflicts about it. It was more me saying it's a hard no from me. I'm not doing it. I don't see the point in it personally.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he was born. This is his body. If it's for medical reasons, absolutely sure, but I'm not doing that to my child. It's a hard no. And if anything happens, it's on you if you decide to go ahead with that. I wish we'd had that conversation earlier because we could have then spoken about it a little bit more. And obviously my emotions, I probably didn't handle it the best way, like just putting my foot down and saying no. I didn't really give him the space to talk through it and why he wanted to make that decision and all that sort of stuff. So I think if we had those cards, it would have been good to define where there's wriggle room and where there's no on either side. So we'll add those in the show notes because that's a really good suggestion.
I'm just thinking that in terms of parenting, it is true what they say in terms of it takes a village, it takes a community to raise your kids. And I think this parenting style stuff is still valid. It's still something to think about, even if you're a single parent. And if you're listening and you are a single parent, honestly, I don't know how you do it. You are absolutely incredible. And I'm sure you're doing an amazing job. But even if you are a single parent, there's still people involved, right? In terms of parenting, there's still like your family or your close friends or whoever it is that you might get help to babysit or They come over for lunch, even for those couple hours that they're there, they need to adapt to your parenting styles because they're your kids. So it's really interesting. And I did think about this because I know with your experience and where you're at right now, that you find it a bit harder to let other people babysit or look after your kids. And I know that comes back to like boundaries and setting that up really early. But in terms of just other people who are involved in your kids' lives and their styles, have you had issues with that where you've had to be like, actually, no, can you not talk to my kid like that? Or that's not how I would deal with that. What's your experience with that?
So I'm going to challenge a little bit on the first part of that. I personally don't feel that people need to adapt to my parenting style. So if people come over or anything like that, like I don't expect them to adapt to my parenting style.
Sure. Okay.
And that's probably not how you meant it, but I do think that they need to respect me as a mum and as a parent,
Yes.
and they need to, if I'm not giving my kids sugar or if whatever the situation may be, then they need to respect
That's what I
that.
mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
They need to adapt to you in terms of you're the
parent.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And follow my rules as a parent.
Yes.
So if I've said no playing after whatever time, or you have to go to bed at whatever time, they have to respect that. So you hit the nail on the head, because you're right. You know me, obviously. So with regards to our community and our families, Calvin and I are aligned in that we really wanted to be hands-on parents, and we really wanted to control the narrative and the exposure that our kids have. Not to say that they don't see people and friends and family and all of that, but we did make a conscious choice to not let family babysit. And as I've mentioned before, it was just through a few red flags, a few instances where our parenting style wasn't being respected, or our parenting rules or our parenting guidance wasn't being respected. And I think it sets a really poor example on the kids. And I have personally seen it through friends where unfortunately they were in a situation where both the grandparents were separated. So there was like partners, and it was just a massive family. And when they would go to the grandma, they would have this rule. When they would go to the grandpa, they would have a different rule. When they would go to the other grandma, they had a different rule. And then when they came home, the poor kids were just so confused and had no idea what rules to obey, had no idea. They were just confused. There was just mass confusion everywhere. And then the parents, of course, had to deal with that when they're at home, because they're with them most of the time, and they had to deal with that. And of course they didn't listen to them, and it became a nightmare. And unfortunately those particular friends ended up splitting because it just caused such conflict in the household. They didn't have control of the kids. It's just how it happened. It was through needing the help because of work. And it wasn't that they were just being lazy and they were just dumping their kids on family and stuff. It's just they needed to work. And I am lucky enough that Calvin and I both can look after our kids, and we have a really good routine in that we know, we discuss, can you do this? Can you look after the kids? Can you do the drop off? Can I do the drop off? And we're really good in that regard. And we both were aligned on that particular topic. As the kids get older though, and they know the rules and they know the expectations of them, I think we'll let them go a little bit more. And we might have to have some hard conversations that come. But I really felt that, especially in those early years, especially when they're developing and their brains are developing and they're learning what's expected of them, I really didn't want them to be confused and to have mixed information, mixed signals from different family, different people to say this is okay and all that. Now it gets to a stage where, because Aiden's older and he can understand, and if I say to him, it's okay if you watch TV for 2 hours when you're at grandma or grandpa's house, or whoever's auntie's house or whoever's house, because that's okay. But that's at their house. That's a special treat when you go to their house. It's not going to happen at home. And he would understand that concept now, whereas when he was younger, he wouldn't have known. And there's just little things where he's allergic to peanuts, and I'm not quite sure that's sunk in. I don't think people really understand what that means. And so that scares me when medical things are a little bit
that makes sense,
misunderstood. So I just feel like it's just easier, and we haven't had the need to. I know that it's probably not great because it hasn't created a bond with their grandparents. They do have one, so when we go, we're there and they do play with them and it's all fine, but the helicopter parent in me is always there. And yeah, we just haven't had the need to. Like, there's been no times where Calvin and I have been in dire straits where we're like, we haven't organized our lives well enough to be able to look after our kids. So
Yeah.
that's where
How
we're
about
at
child-
currently. Stay tuned. I'm sure
Yeah.
that'll change over the course of the next couple of years.
What about childcare? Has there been any issues at childcare?
No, the only issue that we had with childcare was around Calvin and I disagreeing on whether they should go to childcare.
Okay.
I was very for childcare and he was very against childcare. But I think when we had the conversation and I said, I need to go back to work, I need my life back, or some form of it, because you're never going to get it completely back. I need to have purpose. I need to make my own money. I need to have my independence and I need to go back to work. As well as that, I could see the benefits in going to childcare around their development and language skills and social skills and even just germs. I'm like, he needs to, because Calvin was really worried about germs, attachment parenting. No, I need to keep them safe.
Bless Calvin.
And also he loves spending time, the same as you. Like, he loves spending time with the kids. Like, he's taken time off over school holidays to spend time with the kids. So he just loves spending time with the kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just had to explain it to him that, come on, like, you can't be there all the time. Like, you need to let go. So in some ways we complement each other in that regard, that I'm like, okay, let go and let them be. And he's, no, and I'm like helicopter hovering and he's like, just let them be. So it's not all bad. There are things that we are discovering as we go along that we're not aligned on, but we, like I said, we have those conversations and we figure out how to make it work. How about you guys? Is there a common theme on things that you constantly conflict on, that you're constantly not finding common ground on?
No.
Or is it just random things?
Yeah, there's no common theme. With parenting, it's choose your own adventure situation where things just pop up and then you just deal with it and it works or it doesn't work and then you try something else. I feel like we've both been quite flexible in terms of most things, because even when we do disagree, it's slightly disagreeing. It's not opposite. It's not chalk and cheese situation where it's a yes and no. It's a, oh yeah, maybe often. Oh yeah, maybe a lot. Like, it's, do you know what I mean? Like, it's closer. It's not been a big issue for us. With the parenting style thing and like going beyond just your partner and how other people's parenting styles and how that might conflict with yours because they're involved within your kids' lives, I would say overall it's been pretty positive, pretty easy for us. I am the type of person where I'm going to say stuff because why not say stuff? I'm not someone who's going to sit and stew about something because life is too short to do that. And I have pulled people up on stuff. So I will say to my mum, no, can you not do this or can you not do that? It's always in a open kind of way. It's not I'm annoyed with you or grumpy. It's not confrontation or anything like that. It's just as a mum and they're my kids, can we just not give them heaps of sugar, or can we not do this and all that stuff? But then I also have to respect my mum's approach, for example. And if she's going to come and babysit, she's doing me a massive favor. I've got to be a bit more flexible in terms of certain things, but then there is always a line with things as well. And if she crosses it, then yes, I will definitely have that discussion. We've had chats with childcare where maybe they weren't across something as much as we would want them to be across. I'm very big on having relationships with everyone. I know all the childcare workers that the kids go to. We have a relationship with all of them. I message the centre director. We laugh and joke about stuff too. So when things come up, it's generally pretty easy for me because I've built that relationship with people. But I will always say something, always, because my kids are like the most important thing to me. And if something doesn't sit well, even just a tiny bit, I will mention it.
So you mentioned that when your mum, Kenzo, and Ambrose's grandma babysits, you have mentioned things. I'm sure it's nothing too big, but you have mentioned it. Is that generally well received, or does she give you the, I've raised however many kids, like I know what I'm doing? Obviously you have a good relationship with your mum. Is that generally respected?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't think I've had a situation where people haven't. I think it comes down to your relationship with people. And I have a really great relationship with my mum. My mum and I have this weird relationship where I honestly feel like the parent sometimes. she would agree. So, yeah, there's been no issues. But I was just thinking in terms of the process that I take, and it's adapted as I've grown into my role as a mum. I often don't wait until things happen. We might come visit Matt's mum, so their nana, and right at the start, I'll let her know what's going on with our lives, what's going on in Kenzo's life, and the stuff that we're focusing on. Oh, he's been having issues with this. I would bring stuff up so that she's across things straight away. I'm not going to wait until stuff comes up and then she knows that, oh, he's, I don't know, having anxiety about something or whatever it is. It's just putting it out there. We're open about how things are going. We're open about things that we might be finding challenging as parents, or Kenzo might be experiencing any challenges. I think that maybe that approach has really worked in regards to just keeping dialogue really open with our community and everyone who's involved with their lives, and making sure that we're on the same page as much as we can be, because we know obviously people have different approaches. But if I could help them to get as close to what our approach is when they're dealing with our kid, then great. But also respecting the fact that there's going to be some differences, as long as those differences aren't crossing specific boundaries that we might have set, then all good. I think the more people in their lives, the better, because you're going to deal with such a range of people like in your life. And my family, they're bonkers. So throw the insanity in, and then my kids will grow up being super successful and be able to deal with any craziness that's out there.
I think we'll wrap up for today. Having different parenting styles is okay. No one is going to be the same. We're adults and we're parents as well. So disagreeing with someone, it comes part and parcel of life, not just parenting. We would highly recommend doing this exercise with your spouse, with the other people in your community if you wanted to. It really does provide a platform to self-assess, and hopefully it opens up the door to some positive conversations. As always, thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the Milk and Madness podcast, please leave us a review, and we'll see you in future episodes.
Bye.